About a week ago, John Ramsey gave an almost 35-minute interview where he made some interesting claims. The first happens at around 10 minutes, a third of the way into the interview, where John claims not to know or to be sure if the suitcase found under the basement window was theirs. Here are John's words verbatim. You're going to hear them, but here they are also transcribed for your convenience.
The suitcase that was under the windowsill in the basement.
Well, yeah, when the so-called detective that was there that morning, the only person that was there, said, go through the house and see if you find anything unusual, out of place. Well, that was bingo, big time out of place.
Now, do you remember the focus ever being on the suitcase in any of the narratives? Do you remember ever having this question, who does this suitcase belong to? Because it doesn't belong to the Ramseys. Kind of like the flashlight on the kitchen counter or the high-tech boot print in the wine cellar.
Under the window, with the window open.
Right. It is believed.
And the window is broken, and I told I'll call her detective, I said, look, I broke that window last summer. It may not have ever been fixed. I don't know. So maybe it was broken by me, but that suitcase doesn't belong there, and the window should not have been wide open.
So, wow, here John is saying that he broke the window, but if it was fixed without his knowledge, maybe someone else broke it after he did. The other thing is, the window wasn't wide open. It was only wide open when it was photographed. Meanwhile, here's a question, and I'll provide an answer at the end of this analysis. A single fingerprint was found on the basement window. Whose was it?
I got nightmares in my head, I fear. Thoughts build up until I can't feel. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. Well, I will be putting a link to this interview with John Ramsey in the description. A lot of what we're dealing with is taking place at about 10 to 12 minutes, so you can look at it there. But here is another whopper, where John also says, it's been so long ago, I don't even know if that was our suitcase.
Yeah, it's been so long ago, I don't know if that was our suitcase or not. It didn't, all I saw was...
John is also asked to confirm if JONBENET's nightgown was found in the suitcase. John answers,
apparently.
Why would it be in?
Well, that's the first I've heard of it. As far as I know, JONBENET's favorite pink Barbie nightgown was found in the wine cellar. So someone seems to have forgotten the elements of this crime scene. Before we get to the rest of this analysis, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. By the way, if you want me to deal with this whole question of untested DNA evidence and is this the smoking gun and is this really the area that the Ramsey case needs to go into, let me know in the comments and we will deal with that area. If you're finding this analysis worthwhile, please like, share, leave a comment. You can also hit the thanks button and let's get started. So let's deal quickly with just how ridiculous this is. Are you telling me an intruder brought a suitcase into the crime scene? But he didn't bring a paper, a pen, or a murder weapon. Also, that an intruder brings the suitcase into the crime scene, also brought a flashlight, right? And intended to take JONBENET, but then ended up leaving all these things at the crime scene, but no traces of himself. He's so clumsy, he leaves behind the suitcase, he leaves behind a 3-page ransom note, leaves behind the flashlight, but no fingerprints. He clumsily leaves behind the suitcase, but no evidence of himself in the suitcase or on the suitcase. He clumsily writes a rambling 3-page ransom note, but then he forgets to claim the ransom or to leave any fingerprints on the note itself. You kind of get this idea that this is a really dumb criminal, But then why is he so smart in other ways? He gets in and out the house without leaving any traces of himself. He gets in and out of the basement window without leaving any prints there. No prints, no fibers, no DNA, no debris. Now, you might not think that it matters that there's no debris left behind, but if there's snow all over the place and if you're going in there at night, your shoes are going to be moist and things like leaves and dirt are going to be stuck to the soles of your shoes and also going to be left in the house, especially if one's going on one's hands and knees and making an unconventional entry in a limited space the way we're seeing here. Why is there no debris from the garden in the basement? Like absolutely none. More pertinently, in both of the initial reports, those from Arndt and French, there's no mention whatsoever of John bingoing in on anything in the basement. Not in the suitcase, nor even the basement window. Look at what we're dealing with here. The first responding officers arrive at the scene and they say, tell us what you know. Tell us what is standing out to you. Tell us what your concerns are. And they don't repeat anything about John saying anything about anything in the basement. John says nothing to them, certainly not in their reports, about a suitcase, let alone not recognizing the suitcase, and nothing about the basement window. It's not in their reports whatsoever. Even in the Ramsey book on page 21, John has an internal monologue with himself about the window, but the only reference to the suitcase isn't that he doesn't recognize it, isn't bingo big time. He simply writes, odd, that suitcase isn't normally kept there. He also says, I carefully closed the window before heading upstairs, and then he goes on to tell exactly no one about his suspicions. If he had told the officers about the window or the suitcase or both, what do you think would have happened there and then? Well, the cops would have gone straight to the basement and searched it more carefully. Telling the cops about a possible point of entry in the basement there and then would have very likely led to the discovery of JONBENET in the basement there and then. Is that what the perpetrator wanted? John also mentions Linda Arndt saying to him to search the house for anything unusual, anything out of place. Well, that was his opportunity. Besides in the hours spent sitting around, to say, well, guess what? I can tell you something that I saw that was unusual. Why didn't he say it? Why is he saying it now in an interview? Why didn't he say it then? Or did he say it then and the police didn't report it because they are incompetent, inept? And yet they made other statements, both of these officers, that John said he read to JONBENET, he read a storybook to JONBENET that night. Little details like that. Now, I mean, when he goes down to the basement after 1 p.m., in terms of his own versions of events, it's either the second or the third time that he's going down to the basement. Why does he need to go down a second or third time to investigate what he already knew about, already saw earlier that morning based on his own book? He doesn't need to go down there to say, well, I saw a suitcase or I saw the window. He'd already seen it. So why not just mention it to Linda Arndt right there? What's also interesting is the scenario John seems to want us to believe is that the basement window was left open by the intruder, but John then helpfully closes the window and then didn't report it open or report closing it. He didn't say, I closed the window to anyone that day, as far as I know. And so for any of those agonizing hours waiting for the kidnapper to call, why doesn't he mention it then? And so if this is true, why not? So we really have one of two scenarios here. Which do you think is likely and which unlikely? Scenario 1, A, the basement window was closed all along. B, an intruder opened the basement window and John then closed it behind him. Does that make sense? Meanwhile, any guesses as to the answer to our earlier question? Whose fingerprint was found on the basement window? And it was also the only fingerprint found on it. Whose was it? Was it Fleet White's? Was it Patsy's? Was it Officer French? Was it some unknown, as of yet unidentified fingerprint, likely belonging to an intruder? No, it was John Ramsey's. I'm not going to take it further than that. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.